Dressage Day is done in 2 days' time. 48 hours. I think that's right. We will find out who is going to be the Olympic champion because the competition is well underway. Dee, Sam, and the lovely Mark Ruddock are with me as we are going to reflect on actually what has been an action-packed day of dressage. It's been a long day of dressage. I don't know about anybody else, but it feels like actually we've seen a lot of tests today. Mark, I'm going to come to you first. It is lovely to have you with us, international judge, trainer. You are our eye of expertise in the pure discipline on the first phase. What do you make of the dressage, having watched everything today?
And I have watched everything. I do feel like we've been watching it for 2 days. I felt this afternoon. Well, first off, this morning, Julia, when she got 26.9, I was like, that is mean. I thought she'd have been about 2021. And then I did wonder where they were going to go, having given us 26.9, because it was absolutely stunning. It was just stunning. I would have her third if I was judging. And then I just felt this afternoon, and also this morning, the mistakes were getting, like a dodgy flying change was getting a 5 and a 6 when it should have been clearly a 4. They were quite generous to the mistakes. And then this afternoon, the marks just kept coming and coming and coming. It was like a class of 2 halves.
It was literally like a roller coaster of marks this afternoon.
Things started with the number 2. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'll pick up on the scoring a little bit later because I think there's an interesting conversation there. But when we talk about the roller coaster of the marks, the lady at the top of the roller coaster has to be Laura Collett. London 52 nailed an Olympic record, 17.5. 389 international tests up to this point. On her 390th at the Olympics, she delivers a personal best at any level. I mean, in terms of rising to the occasion, that is some performance.
I was looking at the Eck internal WhatsApp as that happened. I didn't think it was going to be 17.5, if I'm honest. And that's, I mean, obviously, in the presence of an actual dressage judge here, but even just from following the live scores, it felt like it went from 19 or 20 somewhere in, like, it felt like it was going to lead comfortably, and then like I was expecting it to come up as 19, and it came up on the screen pretty quickly as like 17.5, which I was surprised by. One of those moments that you see rarely enough. Okay.
It was something else to the horse's way of going. How she has it has such lovely cadence and expression, but like the suppleness and the cadence and like that last extended canter. I mean, he just ate the ground up, came back in a nanosecond, turned on centre line and a great halt. And I believe she got a 10 for her riding.
10.
Well, it's not riding now, it's called.
I was going to say there were 10s that came in on the last couple of movements, which really pulled that score down, which I think that's why you don't necessarily see it on the trending score.
All of a sudden, there's a 9 for a halt.
Those come in.
And 10,
yeah.
10
but the way the horse has such an amazing contact, and it just is, the neck is a beautiful length. There wasn't a weak spot in anything there, and it walks beautifully. Yeah. And I
have never been so happy. At lunchtime, we came on a live and I was going, oh, there's umbrellas. He doesn't like umbrellas. I've never been so happy to see a horse, Sam, that was absolutely fine with umbrellas. You know Laura very well. You've worked with her for a long time. Actually, what does this mean? She came back from Tokyo and said, do you know what? I made a mistake in Tokyo. I can do better. She did better here.
The story coming in here, look, we kept doing, any way we looked and sliced and diced this as analysts, form kept telling us to talk about Chipmunk versus London 52. So, and I'm going to quantify this in a second. Obviously, Graffalo with badminton and the Europeans, and I love the way Graffalo had been kept ready for this and kept fresh for this. I like that. Now, looking today, Graffalo looked too fresh. He looked like a horse that could have benefited from maybe having another exposure in a big atmosphere. He might have just been a little bit more relaxed because the other 2 horses were just so with their riders. Now, we talked at lunchtime going, London 52 hasn't done that. So when you take, if the story is London 52 versus Chipmunk, there's history, folks. There's big history. Chipmunk, we talk about, is the horse who's led every championship he's been to, which is 5. 4 with Michael Young, 1 with Julia, and he's lost them all. He's never converted his lead to be a win. London 52 has gone to the 4 championships that Michael Young has ridden Chipmunk at, obviously with Laura. Laura and London have always been a partnership. And these two have real history. They've had 4 head-to-head battles at championships. Between them, they have the 4 best finishing scores in the sport's history at 5-star. These are the low-scoring maestros of the sport, but Chipmunk has the best. London has the next 3. It's incredible. These 2 horses, in terms of scoring and taking the sport to new levels, they are the conversation. But London has under-delivered at championships. They've averaged a 23, where Michael Young, or 22.3, where Michael Young's been averaging a 20. He's had like just over 2 mark advantage on him at the 4 championships. London's come in, reversed that, delivered. I love the story. I love the fact that our sport allows us to have these combinations that are coming to their 6th and 5th championship respectively. They're 2 of the greats that the sport's ever seen in terms of scoring ability. London 52 with 3 5-stars already under his belt, now vying for that first championship win. Chipmunk trying to get his first championship win, having led 5 of them. I think it's fascinating. But right there behind them, you've still got Garofalo in the picture, not where she wants to be. You got the return of Chris Burton lurking in the picture. You got the rise of this guy, Felix Vogue, who's won a 5-star already. We've talked about the Swiss, but this guy's got to be leading that charge. Oh, this is setting up to be a phenomenal Olympic Games. History books are they're always written. History's always written at the Olympic Games, but you got to get to know the characters. You got to get to know the backstories. And I love the way this is playing out. And I actually love the fact that it's still Chipmunk in London. I'm glad to see them 2 there because they haven't converted. Chipmunk's never won. London's best finished in a championship, Nicole, is 9th. He's surely going to finish 4 attempts. He's surely going to. That's the best. Two 9th finishes. Yeah, surely going to do better than that.
Tokyo and the Europeans.
Tokyo and the Europeans, yeah, had an encounter with some sort of canary bird in the water at Lamoulan on the first one, ran past the little skinny thing off a drop, and there's something similar lurking in that course map. I haven't walked the course, obviously. I'm here in Carlo, I'm not there, so I don't know. But there's something similar. There's nothing can replace the Bertoni slide. There was a bit of mud in Harastapan that he didn't love. Tokyo didn't go 100% according to plan. We'll be talking about that second show jumping around in Tokyo, possibly if everything goes well tomorrow. But we have 2 superstars of the sport that have brought the sport to new levels already. They've already set the record finishing scores in the sport at 5-star level. They've now set new Olympic records. Both of them have broken the record. Obviously, London holds it, being in the lead. They deserve to be where they are. Mark's talked about the beauty and the elegance of what London delivered. But in doing it, they've also set up a very intriguing competition.
So Laura Collett leads 17.5. Michael Young, not even a second behind her, 17.8. He actually managed to really, really keep the gap very, very tight. Mark, on his test, you'll have seen Chipmunk do a first phase on plenty of occasions.
Yes.
What did you make of it today?
Let me go to my notes.
I love that you've made notes. Listeners, this is what we are here for. I hope you had a highlighter, Mark, as well. Please tell me you had a highlighter.
Well, my highlighter was one I loved. I'll come back to that one. No, I don't have a highlighter pen, but I'll come back to that one that I want for the future. To fair. So, Michael, I would like more cadence compared to Laura's. Yeah.
Okay.
Very accurate and correct.
Yeah.
And more actual self-carriage compared to Laura's. And that's why I can't believe he's only 0.2 or whatever it is behind her. Great walk, but Laura's had a great walk. He just needs more that Laura's has. And that's just God-given. That's nothing,
It's funny, though, because when you say how accurate he is, there's one thing that Michael Young does is that he holds on to those marks and the dressage judges kind of have to prize them out of his hands, don't they? Because he just gives absolutely nothing away. Those 2 are actually a little way clear of the rest of the field. Equal third, Alex Fatian, Yilsen van Brielhoff, which is a huge result.
I was very impressed with his test. Very impressed with Alex.
Chris Burton shadow man. I mean, the return of Chris Burton, I feel like if tomorrow turns into a time test, it would have been, there'll be all hell breaking loose, D. I mean, when you look at the return from actually only creating a partnership with this horse at the beginning of the year, getting qualified, then getting selected, he comes and delivers one of the best Australian tests that we've seen at an Olympic Games. Not the best, but one of the best.
Well, I know you're directed at a D, but like, so the Chris Burton story is phenomenal, and we've often called him the fastest man on turf. The fact that he's disappeared for 3 years, now come back, but he showed he's still got his class. Getting his other horse that he's gotten back in the sport in Aachen, bringing him back, and making the time in Aachen, which no one had done for 3 years. What the entire time while Chris Burton was out of the sport, no one made the time at Aachen. He comes back, he sets the record for making the time at Aachen because he's done it more than anyone else. He's back. The one thing I would say, if you follow the Equiratings Prediction Center, just bang that into Google, it's going to come up. They're also there on news.equiratings.com, by the way, eventing predictions. He's undervalued, okay? Because when he came back, firstly, this horse was with another rider. Now, Prediction Center does take metrics from the rider as well as the horse. But secondly, when he came back, his priority was obviously to get the horse qualified. So he's not really unleashed him. He unleashed him once, which was Mill Street, but loads of others made the time at Mill Street as well. So it wasn't a difficult time. So Prediction Center has him down at like I think it's about a 14% medal chance and about a 3% win chance. I would say you could mark that up with the information that our decision makers that we work with, high performance managers throughout the world, looking at these numbers. We empower those decision makers to be able to put a team together that's going to suit Paris. We give them the information. Data doesn't make decisions for people. It helps them to make better decisions. This is one of the places, if you were thinking like, do I have him in my team? Should I be backing him at 60-1 with the bookmakers? We'd be saying, if you just look at Prediction Center, which is just going on the algorithms, completely objective, very, very intelligent, but objective, he is an outlier case. He is better, I would say, than prediction. For sure, I would say he's better than the algorithms suggest. You bring that knowledge, you bring that wisdom and intuition into your decision-making. For me, Chris Burton is the third favorite here. I would have him ahead of Graffalo, which is phenomenal. But the question I have for Mark Ruddock is, run a side-by-side of Chris Burton's test versus Julia Krajewski's test, because the other thing that we have seen today in no uncertain terms is not just Julia, who was first into the ring, but put a trend line across the whole competition, and it goes from people being 2 marks higher than where they were trending before the Olympics ever started to 2 marks lower at the end of the competition. One of two things has happened here. Either everyone at the beginning of the competition got worse in their preseason training, and they all came to the Olympics and they all under-delivered this morning. And it just so happened that the draw order came out that the first people just bad training, bad execution. And it just so happened that everyone at the end of the competition, particularly after lunch, really improved. They did brilliant training in the last couple of weeks, and they really delivered, and they had everything right. Or judges were slow to give marks early on, and judges got very free with marks afterwards. Because we're not talking 1 or 2 marks here. We're talking show jumps. We're talking Julia Krajewski is 2 marks off the lead. She could be within a rail, according to our analytics. If you take the view that where you were drawn mattered today, that's what it suggests. She could be within a rail of the leaders. She's not. She's over 2 rails behind them. The Olympic champion, the reigning Olympic champion.
You say about Chris and Shadowman compared to Julia, like, so it's for 26.9 and 22. And I put on Chris's expressive and loose, slipped last change, and some tension at times. Julia's, I'd put lovely frame, a little lucky, great walk and great changes. She had a clear round this morning, a fantastic clear round. And she didn't come to school worse than she did last event. You know, when you're saying about were that first lot worse than they've ever done this season. Julia, no, I don't really know. I would say Sarah's horse is really spooky and lucky, so that's right. I think Shane Rose was a bit harsh. I think if they all came this afternoon. And who else did I think was? I thought when somebody else with a famous person came in somebody else came in. I think they were a bit namey as well.
It's really hard, isn't it? I wouldn't want to be a judge. Like I hold my hands up.
When I look at the
Absolutely no
flags,
way
I'm
would
like,
I want to have to do.
sorry, there's 2% for the flag as well. Yeah. There's flags that can get you a
64.
deduction as well, by the way.
It's a big gap, I would think, is the thing for me. I mean, I would agree with you, Nicole, in that like no one wants to be slate and dressage judges because we know a lot of them. They're on the pod, like everyone says. Like it's an easy thing to do. Okay, I get that piece, Nicole. So it's not out of a sense of just trying to take an easy comment on something, and there's endless respect there, and I think that's an important underlying piece. But the same respect allows you to have the conversation. The gap is big. Like in I remember Ingrid Klimke lost at badminton on a mark that was for a flying change once, and there are moments that you don't ever get back. Like, and actually the story here, it's a big story. I don't think anyone minds. Or not that they mind. They do mind in the moment, but there's a lot of heat and tension in the moment when you're talking about the subjective element, the subjective phase of the sport. For Julia to be this far off the lead, given the sport that happened today, that's like, for the gap to be so big, for the gap to be a couple of marks, I think you can say, well, actually, there is still enough bridges to cross, but for it to be two rails apart and for it to follow a trend, which is not that it was Julia marked hard and Laura marked in a different group, but, and I'm not picking on those two particular, when you actually take the first 30 riders and the second 30 riders, or the 30 riders before and the 30 riders after, and you draw a line down the middle, there was a big difference before lunch and after lunch. And it's,
but it's not. I think you've hit on a really crucial point here, Dee, which is because of like today was a long day. Like honestly, there were points, particularly this morning. We've all commented on it coming on here, going, "Oh, I feel like I watched 2 days of dressage," right? But actually, when you look at people in the stands who've seen, like their kids have just started riding, they don't really know much about eventing, but they got tickets for the Olympic Games, and there were horses involved. I'm going there. They were in the stands, getting rained on. You have to be quiet because you don't want to spook the horse, and you're just there for a full day. Like it's long. It is subjective. It is the longest phase. It is the first phase. And if you're going to build a story, which sport should, and you're going to build a crescendo, you probably want to build your influence towards the back end. You want the kind of drama to come late. And we do get some late drama. But if we compare the first phase to the last phase, first phase is subjective, last phase is objective. But a good round on Mondays, it's going to be today in the show jumping, is going to be a clear round, 0 penalties. And the average is going to be 1 down. That's the most common round. Someone's going to chip a rail. And then there'll be people on 2 down, which is going to be, that's a bit of a bad round. And you can have very bad rounds like 3 down, or a very, very bad round, which is 4 down. Now, you'd mentioned Sarah Ennis, Mark, has had, compared to Laura and Mickey, she's over 20 marks behind. So she's had 5 fences down. Julia's had 2 fences down because she's over 8, and more than, by the way. Like Laura and Mickey can have 2 fences down and still be ahead. To me, it felt like at most Julia is a 1 down round compared to the 2 that were really good today, or particularly the 1 that was really good today. And I still think there's a lot of other ones that I think there's plenty within 1, should be within 4 faults, because that feels like the right balance. And then the 8 faults, the 12 faults, because being 12 or 16 penalties behind is so much of a gap to break up. If someone goes into the ring on the final phase and has 3 fences down or 4 fences down, there's no getting away. Like, that is a really bad performance. But on that, like, you've got to ask, if Laura's on 17.5, 3 down plus 12, 29 is 29.5 a really bad performance now? And particularly if it came this morning, if you got a 29.5 this morning, I'd have said you'd actually done a really nice performance. So look, it's been, I think there's plenty of narrative, plenty of excitement, plenty of drama, but boy, you do get a huge head start in that first phase if you can deliver. And there's a lot of people with really no medal chance now.
I've just gotten, sorry, go on.
You're right, Dee, go on. I was going to go on to teams, so stick with you for a second.
Oh, I'm on Teams as well. I'm going on to Teams, so you take it away.
Okay, perfect. Because I wanted to see how the dressage, as it unfolded today, actually impacted the team win chances. Because it feels like there has been a real shake-up. There's a couple of teams that have absolutely thrown themselves into the mix, and there's a couple of others that perhaps haven't necessarily underperformed, but haven't quite delivered the scores that their counterparts have. The Brits came in to the dressage with a 40% win chance. They actually have just increased that by 1%. So a 41% win chance for the Brits. So not a huge.
Yeah, because this is a team of three. And like, we'll get to Tom McEwen in a minute, but like, his win chance has dropped hugely, and so is Ros Cantor's. So actually, while there's this huge history-making performance from Laura, there's actually been a bit of disappointment there. And I think there is disappointment from Ros, and possibly a bit of underperform. Like, I think she's there going, oh, I wish there was a couple of things I could have done better. I don't know, Mark, your interpretation of Tom's test, whether that, because he was obviously first to go, how much is he thinking there's more I should have done versus how much is he thinking I could have gotten a better mark there compared to what the others got?
Well, I would think if he watched Julia's test, he'll think, how did I beat it? Sorry, being quite out there. Yeah. Which he did. For me, the horse was a little bit tense and like opened its mouth, and I would not have. I think he should be happy with that score. If I would not have given him that score. I thought mouth was opening, the rein back, he was against the hand, and the tighten the changes, and I thought that was a very, very generous mark, and he's very happy with that. Who was you asking me about there? Yeah, and,
no,
then,
that was just
and I think I agree with what you said about Ross. He just looked tense. He just looked too giddy. He was too giddy and too hyper, wasn't he?
The British team, though, collectively, are still have produced a record dressage score for any team at the Olympic Games after the first phase. I mean, that is an absolutely huge performance from them. They've overtaken. I wrote this down quite a lot. I was quite excited by this. I'm not going to lie, listeners. I was watching because Australia in Hong Kong 2008, 68.6 was their first phase score. That was obviously counting three from four even. But of course, the Brits now have delivered on that and actually have created a new record, 66.7, which is some team score, to be fair. I mean, let's be honest, they did a record finishing score at the Olympic Games in Tokyo 3 years ago, and it ended up being about 89.1 or something off the top of my head, something like that. So I mean, they're about 20 plus marks, 20 plus marks ahead of where that was. Aside from the Brits, who, yes, a couple of them might have wished for a few more marks. Laura obviously did a massive performance. Where else are we, Sam, in terms of the numbers? Because actually,
it's the same for the Germans, Nicole. It's the same. Germany, like, we've had a bit of a journey today. We did a live at lunchtime. I think we're nearly going to have to, in future, we're going to have to do lives after each round of riders, because it's been a roller coaster. I was bang on about Belgium, and then one rider later, it was like, oh God, all that progress has gone, plus change for, stepping back. Germany did the same. Actually, their first two riders, like, Julia didn't make her expected. She delivered her test, but she didn't get the mark. Chrissy Waller as well, I think, was going for this mega score, and then mistakes came in. Like, there was absolutely zero walk there. So they both missed it, and Germany were leaking. Germany went out. They were no longer the number 2 nation on our projections in this competition. France had overtaken them, the home favorites. But then Mickey Young, what does he do? He claws it back with this huge test, getting up there with Laura. So we end up like going, this dressage phase wasn't eventful at all, because Great Britain are 1% better than they started. Germany are only 1% less than they started. The top 2 haven't changed. They haven't really changed. But there was drama within it. The team that has changed, France, are up 5%. They're now a 12% win chance from a 7%. When you're in that position of being a challenger to one of the greatest teams that we've seen, and a team that might go and set a new team record, Nicole, as you mentioned, in Great Britain, you've got the German team. These Great Britain and Germany, between them, they just win all the gold medals, don't they? But France is the other team that won the gold back in 2016. They're on home soil now. They'd want this more than anything. But typical France, we don't really see them that much. We didn't have huge form lines to go on. They're trying to tell us now we're ahead of our numbers. We're ahead of what we've been showing you. We've kept something up our sleeve. We're here to deliver. But New Zealand are also doing that a little bit. They're up 3% and they're now an 11% win chance. It's not been the best first phase for the US. They've dropped from an 8% win chance down to a 5% win chance. So you now have a gap. It looks at the moment a France-New Zealand battle for bronze. But
I feel like, can we just rewind, Dee? You and I on the preview show, we had like an almighty battle of France versus New Zealand. And we really tussled it out as to who we thought. I was Team France, you were Team New Zealand. And I feel like we've got our own private little battle going on head to head here, because actually they've really stepped up.
Yeah, no, both teams did. Actually, just while you were talking, the scores came in there from Georgia, which have the actual team scores for dressage, the expected team scores for dressage from a high performance point of view, and then the differences. And it's a really nice visual in terms of being able to assess a little bit around who performed well, who didn't, how big the gaps are. And actually, Sam, just as you mentioned, the US, like, they're one of the only teams that are above the expected coming in. And that goes a little bit to what we're talking about in terms of the day. I mean, how big an influence was it just that two of their riders happened to be before the break and not one? Because we did see a difference after the break. Belgium are the others.
Germany as well. They had two before the break.
And Germany are on a better than expected. So they were expected like
But that's all Michael Young. Yeah, that's all.
That's all. But, yeah, exactly.
And by the way, everyone is better than expected. So if you look at this competition overall, and you have to say in one word, summarize how the judging was, it was lenient. They were generous with marks, which I have no problem with. That's fine. But it's the balance of when there was periods, obviously at the beginning, not generous, periods straight after lunch, very generous. And there was a twist in there, D. Like I'll do a video on it with graphics and kind of show, and we'll release it at some point, showing the clear.
Feels like kind of different to the bedtime story.
Oh, it's so
it feels like such a different feel, such a different vibe to what you've been doing with your stories. Sorry, Nicole, I've lost my train of thought. Where were we? Kiwis. I think the Kiwis are going to be happy overall.
I think very happy.
Would you agree?
Clark Johnstone delivered the third ever best New Zealand test at an Olympic Games. And also it's their best ever team performance at an Olympics, Team New Zealand, after the first phase.
I'd also add a tough enough day for Australia as well. Again, Berto was their third rider, and that's where their big score came from. But before that, they had lost quite a lot of ground. They have caught a bit back with it. Yeah,
they're way off. And that's one thing that's hidden, by the way, in those like expected scores when you look at it over the course of a team, because as you say, I think it's really clear. 3 Brits came in here as 3 of the front 4, I think, Nicole, wasn't it, in the individual win chances for the prediction center? Correct. I mean, that'll be updated in the next few minutes, but I think you're very likely to see 2 disappointed ones.
It's updated. So Laura now has a 35% win chance. She has gone up from 17%. So pre-competition, Laura was 17%. Roz and Tom were both 16%. Mickey was 15%. It is now Laura 35%. Michael Young 29%. Felix Vogue has moved up to 9%. Roz has dropped to 9%. And Tom McEwen's actually dropped all the way down to 4%. So there's a couple of other movers, but they're the big headline numbers.
Now, if you go back and like, so much of what happens today will be decided by, or will be put into the context of what happens tomorrow. And maybe even if you had a Pertoni style show jumping, how much of the subjectivity will be of today will be forgotten by what happens in the next phases. If you go back to 2016, I think we were in the old dressage scoring system, Mark, before we began to see the very low scores. So we used to talk about sub 30 dressage then as the pinnacle. And I'm sure that that all-star German team, which remain, by the way, the top-rated team, even higher rated than the 3 Brits that we're seeing here today. 3 of 4, but it was Julia, Ingrid, Sandra, and Michael. Yeah, Sandra off the back of an Opgun Luvo 2014 world champion. If you go back to that, I think Michael Young was the only rider that delivered a sub 30 dressage test in terms of what would have been the big standout dressage tests that were expected. I'm sure there was only one big dressage test from that all-star team. But what happened on the Saturday of that Olympics was wild. They also actually only got, I think, one rider home without.
He was the only. No, they scored low, but he was the only one who jumped clear. They had one clear round, and they managed.
They actually only had one low dressage test as well.
Did they?
Yeah, I remember doing the graphic because we did it manually back in the day. You sat on the couch and I sat beside you. You called.
They were fast though. I think.
Yeah, no, they were fast, but they ended up one rail away from gold at one point. But they did it with I would go back and have a look, but they did it with a average dressage, average cross country jumping very fast, and then very good clear show jumping on the last day. Where I'm going with that is so much of what happens today gets forgotten about if it did turn out to be a Protoni cross country. So much of what happens today is so important if it turns into Tokyo. You know, like we're talking today about the difference in 2 show jumps, but if it was a very tight time, a lot of that, while it shouldn't be, but a lot of it gets forgotten about. It gets put out in the wash of time penalties plus jumping penalties. And then we see where we end up tomorrow night and we go and jump on the last day. Depending on how this plays out tomorrow, I think you'll see what you think of today. If it's a Tokyo, I think it's a really, really important day. If it's a Protoni, a Rio, a Con, which we don't expect, we don't really expect a Rio. But if you were to get a twisty, influential time course like Protoni, maybe then you can say that the balance levels up in some way to the other horses.
Can I ask Mark Ruddock a question?
Ask away.
It's a quick, intense test, and it feels like it starts fine, and then it feels like it finishes quick.
It does.
What's your? It's okay. The balance is you got to get everyone in on one day. The other side is like, do you talk to me about A, do you like the test or not? B, do you think some people or some nations in general did a better job with it or not? And is anyone like, what's been left on the table there? Like if you could sort of say like, watching that so-and-so, yeah, maybe could have done that better or handled it better. What's your read on? Talk to me about the test.
So I agree. It starts off really quite easy. We don't even halt at the beginning because I know we can't waste time, and then off you go in a big trot. And I think that the shoulder into half passes, a nice schooling exercise. And then once you've walked, it is literally like, and that's why I think all the horses, on the whole, all the horses walked really well, really, really well. There was like 1 or 2, but out of 60, most of them were good. And then they get into that canter. And I think they've over-practiced it and over-practiced it and over-practiced it.
That's interesting. Over-practice it, because like I'm sat here going like, gee, like,
yeah,
if I'm doing
you can see the
that,
ones that don't over-practice because they were like just anxious as the minute they got onto that diagonal and throwing themselves around.
Is that because they felt like the movements were going to come up quick? They knew what was coming.
Yeah, but I mean, you would expect riders of this level to know that horses anticipate. And you need to do something else. But I think it was being over-practiced and everyone being paranoid about getting that first change from that counter. And there were some good riders that rode very backwards to it, to be fair. And I could sit there going, well, this change won't happen because there's a lot of anticipation. And then I don't like then the half pass to the change to half pass because I think for an event horse, it's just congratulate itself for doing those 2 changes on that on the straight line. And then you come with that half pass, and then it's just boiled some of them over. And I don't think it really is about training when you get an event horse that's hot, fit, when it's brain just goes. Actually, we saw food, didn't we? Actually boiled. But then you get the likes of Laura and Mickey make it look like it's a prelim. Make it look like it's an intro test. I was impressed with the Japanese, but they were very good. I know there was one bad, they had one slightly iffy one. Really impressed with them. But I think, Sam, for me, it was about a lack of suppleness, to be fair, and a lack of throughness. So the supple and through. So training as well, I suppose. Not suppose, I know. Who else was I impressed with? I liked the grey mare for the future.
Oh,
the grey mare.
I know which one you're going to say.
Near the end, and she wanted everyone to be quiet when she came in.
Louise Romaika, Caspian.
Louise, I love that.
It's beautiful.
You watch that show jump. It goes.
Right.
It comes down with snow
insane.
on its ears.
Yeah,
It comes down with snow on its ears.
that'd be my one to watch for getting.
Yeah.
It had everything. Had absolutely everything.
Yeah. And she kind of was a little bit rueful, wasn't she? I mean, it only stepped up to the level, I think, in Arveil in the Nations Cup last year. So did its first 4-star less than 12 months ago. And it's only a 10-year-old. It's obviously quite hot. And she knew at the end that actually, yes, the horse didn't deliver all of the best work today. But
I think she knows it will.
there's
I
so
think
much there
that's
for
why
the future.
that's why she had that rueful look on her face. She'd be like, "I'll be back."
Yeah,
Don't worry about me.
exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
that was really lovely.
Always love an Olympic full story circle as well, because that horse is part owned by her father-in-law, Heinrich Romaika, who, of course, was the 2008 Olympic champion, with another beautiful grey, Marius Logistic, back in Hong Kong. There we go. Okay,
take for the future.
Sorry, what?
Liz Halliday's. Liz Halliday's. I love that.
That trotted, didn't it?
And its potential. And the trouble is with dressage. The trouble is with dressage. If you've got something that just trots a little bit dull and boring, you're never going to get out for 7. And then you get the likes of, you know.
Where with the change? So I was sat here watching with Sparks and Georgia, and but when Laura from the get-go, Sparks was so like, oh, it's so nice. It's so, I have to say, the presentation, the uphill, it's to the contact, and that's it. Whereas the chipmunk, maybe I agree with you, you know, just a little, almost not quite on the contact, a little bit rounder. But in the cant, I thought both of them in the canter work, to be fair. The changes, if you can make dressage visual, because you like part of this, like there's one part of this is us small little people in Eventerland, wanting to make our sport as good as we want it to be, but also we want to try and grow our sport as well. But when Michael and Laura were doing their changes, like there was vocal. There was like, oh wow, lovely. You know, it does look lovely when you do those changes like that. Obviously, some struggled. The flip side of that thing is horses tense and bouncing and riders shimmying from side to side. Doesn't look good. Where would you like? How can we make these? Do you think almost the sequence? It's not sequence changes, but having 2 changes on the diagonal, good thing, bad thing, like fair for event horses. Would we be better off starting off in true canter and actually just doing a line of 4s?
I think so. I think so, Sam. I think it's not a good training exercise and it's not fair on the horses, because as a trainer, you would always go on about the quality of the canter. So you picked up the canter, maybe a bit iffy, and then in 6 strides, you've got to get a flying change.
And you've got to go through a corner. You talk about suppleness.
Have a little bit of steering issues and balance issues. So for me, I think it's a cruel movement. Like, why we couldn't have just picked up the correct leg and then done the change, and then done the change, and then maybe cantered around the short set.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not giving any of you any chance to get quality of canter, because that's all we ever got about is quality of canter, about your change. And that's why, like some Laura's horse, and the ones that did it well, naturally have this God-given quality of canter, even if it's on the right leg or the wrong leg. But your more ordinary horse needs every chance available to it, you know. And I think that's the only thing I don't like about that test.
Let's go on to what we might have in store tomorrow, because actually the Brits out in front on 66.7. They've got a little distance back to Germany, 74.1, France 81.2, and then actually there's 20 seconds cross country, say 2 show jumps between France in the team bronze and the US in 6. Switzerland are actually pretty hot on their heels, Australia and the Netherlands. There's not a lot covering, the top 9 in particular. There's been a lot of conversation about the cross-country course, Sam, and I think we're going to hear from Tina Cook later on in the podcast. This show will be released as a podcast along with a couple of excerpts or inserts in there as well. If we are to go into tomorrow's cross-country, for you, what makes a great day?
I think time penalties are the key now, okay? Because it's very, you have to be an absolute genius to get jumping faults without using cheap pins, as in potentially having pins where a horse actually jumped it quite well, and they, like either at the back, jumping into water or jumping into a coffin, which is not, you probably don't want to have them there. In terms of getting penalties, I don't mind them being pinned, but use a red one. Don't have it on a, bring it back a little bit, whatever. So I'm making peace with the fact that that we don't, and because we train them so professional, the sport is so professional now, like our training of skinnies and all that kind of stuff. But I think I don't mind the twistings. I thought Giuseppe Della Chiesa got a bit of a tough time in Bertoni for how he used camber and how he used turns to slow people down and make them have to mind the balance. And if you come back from a cross-country course that has twists and turns in it and you go, oh, it felt like I was in a washing machine, that's a little bit like me saying to Mark Ruddock when I come out of the dressage arena going, oh, I felt like I was in a washing machine. And he's just going to go to me, well, ride it better. Get your horse in a better balance. Mind your horse better. And that's what you should be. So on cross-country, I'd like to see technical difficulty, like answerable. I don't want to see anything impossible. Like Marcus just said about the dressage, you don't really want to see that movement that you go, I don't think that's great for training. I don't think you can get a lovely feeling doing that, to be honest. It's not great. So you want it to be fair, but you do want it to be challenging, and you want the good riders to be able to make it look good, but you have to impact the leaderboard. If you say cross-country matters, this is the bottom line. If cross-country matters in your sport, it has to matter on the leaderboard. So we've got to see movement. Now, I think the 3 from 3 has ended up being genius in that's where your risk and jeopardy comes from, because we've seen falls on the flat in this sport. We've seen, just surviving a cross-country test in terms of a whoopsie and Part and Company are doing something like that. And the odd flyby, someone's going to fly. So there's going to be a good combination that runs past the fence. We saw Sandra and Aachen. We saw a good few of them in Bertoni, to be honest. Vasily Delassos, London 52, your leader here, had a flyby in Bertoni. You want to see 1 or 2 of those, but you don't have to see those all the time. You don't have to see every rider do that. But if you see loads of zeros, then it gets boring. So if you'd asked me 10 years ago, Nicole, I'd have said, oh, you want to see people falling off. You want to see people running past fences. You just want to see carnage. It's great fun. I think grown-up Sam is a little bit more like, let's look like actually people are enjoying their time, but they are being tested on skill. It's the Olympics. You've got to test them. You got to see them under pressure. Don't make people look like they're sat there just galloping along, come back inside the time and, coming down to the last fence and just sort of everything's just happy. That ain't top high performance sport.
Okay, before we wrap this up, I'm going to come to each of you. I want who leads in both the individual and the team competition tomorrow evening. When we're back on the live tomorrow night, who leads? D?
Oh, I'm in no way ready to do an hour of dressage review and to not do the cross-country preview. I expect we'll be back on, Nicole, to go through who are the fast horses, who to watch, why.
I think we're going to let's do something first thing in the morning.
I think so, only because I'm not, there's always these different periods of emotional flow. As you come off the back of watching all that dressage, I think it's really important, and we're so lucky to have Mark with us, to actually sit, take notes for a day and discuss it. Because sometimes you have a tendency, the minute that's over, to be like, right, well, we've got to get into the cross country, and you forget about all that conversation and excitement that we spend God knows how long building up to. but then you're in such a race to talk about the next thing. So it's great to have an actual dressage review. But yeah, now that we have the field in a particular order, I think we'll go through it. I mean, Sam touched on it very briefly at the start. Some of the, and I think, Sam, this might be another story, again, another video, but not quite your, not quite the bedtime story. Are you doing a bedtime story tonight?
Please do a bedtime story.
Are you?
I am.
Can we just say, for anybody that missed the bedtime story and are wondering what the hell we've been going on about, Sam wrote a bedtime story called "'Twas the Night Before Paris," and it's basically about a little Roz who comes to Paris with her very special horse and her bag full of carrots, and it's brilliant. If you haven't seen it already, Echo Rating's WhatsApp channel, or I think it's on across the social media channels as well. But we're going to have the next chapter.
Yeah, well, and a lot of the characters delivered, by the way. I mean, Little Roz has got some work to do. The first dance, which is going to be what the chapter's going to be called. And by the way, I do hope that some younger people are watching, because look where this comes from. I can't get, like, my boys are obsessed with football. They're in there watching Argentina and Spain playing the Olympics. Half the people in Argentina and Spain in football aren't watching them playing football at the Olympics because they prefer the World Cup or the Europeans, whatever. But he's just like football. Now, at least I was like they were like, oh, Little Roz. And there's actually Little Roz on our screen. So now they know, and they know Graffalo, and they know, and Little Laura's in the lead, little Mickey is there, and it's great. So some of the characters have played their role. Berto is back. They found him, right? Yeah, great.
They found him. Can I just say, my favorite thing about the whole bedtime story was medium-sized Dickie.
And they beat, like, that's like, Mickey is Michael Young, obviously, big William, but we've always called him Big Willie. And you talk about Dickie Waygood, like that's actually AI cancelling out his name, because that's beeped. It's sort of medium beep because they think Dickie's a bad word, but obviously we all know Dickie Waygood. But look, there will be a story, because I think there's been a bit of drama today. There's kind of there's been a few angles, and I think it's going to be fascinating. I still think that Germany have a tough job to do, going out there first on cross country as well is difficult. Sometimes you learn what the challenge is. I've been both times I was in Aachen, I was the first out there. I mean, you stick to your plan and you just go for it. And no better person than Julia Krajewski. But I think the Brits are in a good position here to, the score looks good as a team. The score looks very good. They can get a bit of information back on the course, but it's Tom McEwen is out first and Dublin, and it's a huge moment. And I think if they deliver, which I think they, I mean, in balance of probability, is definitely in their favor. They had a great round around Kentucky, but we get a feel of the time, like his time management. Again, can talk about today being a day of two halves. Tom's round in Kentucky, I thought this is the best I've ever seen this horse. It was phenomenal. I was like, this horse should be in Badminton, not Kentucky or Bird. This horse can go anywhere in the world. And then for the last 3 minutes, I was like, oh, he's feeling it. So only 9 minutes tomorrow will suit him, but it's an intense 9 minutes. I don't know how it's going to work out.
We will do a preview tomorrow morning before we go live. Dee skirted the putting him on the spot. Mark, you're not back probably tomorrow morning pre-cross country. So do you want to tell us who you think is going to be on the top of the leaderboard tomorrow night?
Christopher Burton is going to be on the top tomorrow night. There you go.
Okay, what about the team? What happens in the team?
I think that'd be fine. Just Laura maybe has like a 15 or something. Or
oh God, controversial. Mark, what are you doing to us?
He's playing all sorts of wild cards, isn't he? Like he's playing Mickey might have another pin.
So the Brits will still lead, but because it'll be 15, and then Mickey may have he might have a run out actually. and then Chris Burton will be leading, and Chris Burton will win. There you go.
Oh.
Has Michael ever had a run out? Has he ever had it?
No.
Yeah, but he has on the QT and it's like Strigom.
Yeah, he has had a run out, but he's not lost a major championship through a run out.
No.
With Chipmunk has a run out.
Chipmunk has,
Chipmunk has, and so has Laura.
Last year or something. He had a run. Like he's had one in the last 18 months.
As Sam said, Laura and Mickey have not.
Yeah, but Mark, we don't
Championship.
talk about Laura's runouts.
Lads, can we rewind the clock? I couldn't speak for a second. But, like, you forget about eventing. Like, okay, so rewind to Rio. You can't just blame it all on the course at Rio. Like, there was just you could name 15 big moments of runouts. Like Sandra Opart going out on the world champion Opgun Lubo happened 2. I think 1 was taken away. But like All Star B and Roz at the Europeans. I bring you back to 2021, 2 runouts. Like these horses are not machines, and we say that like that line gets thrown around sometimes. This is a championship. Arctic Soul had a 20 penalties in his career. Classic Moe had a 20 penalties in her career. Le Biostatic Sam eventually, and it was Burley, but he had cross-country penalties. That's why you got to tune in, folks. Something's gonna happen.
Is it in the story?
Something. I'm going to leave you with this. Just 5 of the past 11 Olympic champions, that's less than 50%, have come from the top 5 after dressage. Only 2 of them have led the dressage. That is actually going back to Seoul 1988, Mark Todd Charisma, and David O'Connor Custom Made Sydney 2000. So look, history might say the leaderboard is going to take a shake-up, but watch this.
So not only, so just if anyone who's paying close attention, okay, to what's happening here, you'll remember at lunchtime Nicole said Laura Collett wouldn't be all that. At 5 o'clock on Friday, she started telling people about all the dressage leaders who don't go on to win. I, on the other hand, would like to say this is all going to play out totally fine. Top horses, top riders around a 4-star track. This is made for Laura Collett London 52. And Chipmunk. It'll be a battle royale, but keep your powder dry because the excitement will come on Monday. We've got to get through tomorrow. There'll be a few shake-ups.
But both of them will be a story, D, of the losers that never gave up because of their championship record. I think that's the way you have to frame it. I know Chipmunk has the best ever score, but like
23 international wins, more wins than any other horse.
More wins than any other. I know, but it's the championship thing because
3 5-star wins. These 2 losers.
No. I agree, and I said myself, he's obviously this horse is far from a serial loser. He's trying to equal Sam's record. He's on 23 international wins. He's trying to get to Sam. Sam is the winning most horse internationally of all time, and they come from the same stable, the same man in the pilot. Like. He's going for his 3rd Olympic title to make history, to overtake Sir Mark Todd. There will be loads of stories, like really meaningful, that we'll be telling our grandkids about as well, not in like silly little bedtime stories, but there'll be real bedtime stories. They'll be special. There's story in either. I'm not hoping, and I know you're not either. You're saying it'll be fine, it'll play out. But what I'm caveating there is, like London's best championship finish from 4 attempts is 9th. So,
oh yeah. And by the way, I've been here. I love Laura, as you know, and I love London, and I'm speaking more as a fan. But we've been here when Laura led Aachen. You remember getting to the end of Aachen and like nearly there, and the runouts happened. Mm-hmm. But what I want to do is we got to do it justice, because I think we're only going to do it at the end, touching on it here. There's such a huge story in Chris Burton, like to come back in, to be sitting where he is. I think he's under the radar on numbers because obviously, and I think this is in a different type of bedtime story to come, hopefully tonight, maybe early tomorrow morning. But I think probably hidden in the Shadow Man numbers is the fact that it's not been with Chris all this time. We saw what Chris Burton's able to do at Aachen as a rider in that case, but like he is an exceptional rider at this. If it is to become a time test, it'll be, and like what a story it would be for Chris Burton to come back, win, and go again if he wants. I want to go through it though. I want to feel all the excitement around who's fastest in the top 10. Who should we start getting who should we start tracking early on to see where they end up? I want to talk about Tom McEwen's runouts. I want to talk about that time he had to take a pull at the last song where he lost Kentucky because he was.
Well, you go and talk to the grown-ups. I'm gonna go and write something for the. We'll all convene and we'll all watch it together tomorrow.
First horse tomorrow heads out on course 10:30 local time. The times have just been released, so it's 9:30 British time or Irish time if you're tuning in then.
Well done, Nicole. Thought you were going to leave us out there. Well done. Thank you.
So we will do something first thing in the morning. What do you say, Dee? 8:30?
Yeah, there's nothing more.
You'll be driving. You'll be in the car. Young man. His personal assistant there. Maybe we'll meet at 9. Could we do a live? Can we do a live show to bring us live? Let's think. Can we think of the poor?
Yeah, go live to take us live.
We're meeting in a
Our
hotel
US
tomorrow.
fans, guys. We're thinking of you. We're not going to start too early. Just get up a little. Just get up half an hour.
We'll do that. We'll do it live to take us live. 9 o'clock British time, 10 o'clock French time. Live at 9 tomorrow morning. Join us. We'll give you all of the insights that you need for Cross Country Day. Mark Ruddock, thank you so much for coming on and giving us such brilliant expert analysis. I'm so impressed you took notes, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. You wait till I'm right.
Turn up in black tie. Thank you, Mark. I love your bold statements, but I love the fact that you call it as it is. It's so healthy for the sport. That's how we have to talk about sport. But you're always fair. You're always informed. You're great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for everyone for watching.
Right, I've dinner now.
Right, guys.
Bye.
Have a good night's sleep. Enjoy your bedtime story. Back tomorrow.